Hello and welcome to the Low Carb Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Holly Jean. I'm joined today with my co-host, Leah. Hi, Leah.
Hi, Holly. Hi, everyone.
Hi. And our guest today is Shaun Hadsall. He is also known as the Ripped Grandpa. He specializes in making fat loss simple by focusing on the hormones and metabolisms of people in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. Welcome to the show, Shaun. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, this is right up our alley. And I know Leah and we're not grandmas yet, but we're definitely in the 40s and gracefully aging. So this is a fun conversation to have. So why don't you first, you don't look like a grandpa. Are you a grandpa?
I have 10 grandkids. I am a young papa.
Oh my gosh.
So we have a blended family. My daughter was born when I was 20. And that's actually why I actually started using fitness and diet as an anchor in my life, because I was fighting for joint legal custody rights of her. But I was a young father. So obviously here I am at 51 years old, married my wife 16 years ago, and she has 3 kids. So between the two families, between our 2 daughters, we have 7 grandkids. Pretty cool.
Nice. Okay, well, that's kind of a good intro. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your story and that backstory and how you got started?
Yeah, I fell in love with fitness because of what happened with my daughter, which I'll never forget the day she was born. They wouldn't let me even in the room to see her. And then after she was born, for the first 3 years of her life, they kept her from me. And the family kind of had a dysfunctional history of that. And of course, that led me 2 different directions. One was I was partying and hanging around with the wrong people. And then I started finding I felt the best when I was in the gym. And so my passion for being in the gym led to me working out, I think overtraining. And I would literally work out 2 hours a day just to relieve stress. And it was kind of like my replacement for partying with my buddies. But I wasn't getting a lot of results. And even though I was like, man, I'm exercising 10, 12 hours a week and I'm hardly getting any results, I thought I was eating halfway healthy. And I was at a grocery store checking out, and I picked up this magazine called Muscle Media. Now, this was back before the internet, when people actually read magazines. And I started reading about a body transformation contest called Body for Life. And I read a story about a father who was struggling to get custody rights of his kids. And of course, that echoed my own challenges. And so it immediately inspired me to buy the magazine. I took it home and devoured it. And I ended up joining the contest. And long story short, 12 weeks later, I was first runner-up grand champion out of over 23,000 contestants in the once world-renowned Body for Life contest put on by Bill Phillips, which there was a book years ago called Body for Life.
I remember that.
And I had 6-pack abs for the first time in my life. Now, what was interesting about this is that, I had lost almost 20 pounds of belly fat. I gained 5 pounds of muscle, but I had literally cut my exercise time in half. And so I really discovered that more is not necessarily better, that exercise is the stimuli for the results that occur while we rest and nourish. And of course, we'll dive into diet, because we all know 70 to 80% of your results when it comes to losing weight and belly fat is diet. Exercise obviously plays a critical role in that. But what I found out was that fitness is an anchor that leaks over into every other area of your life, like a faucet of positivity. And so at the end of that contest, I had this new body, but that was just a reflection of what happened to every other area of my life. I had paid off all my debts. I had the courage to mend some broken relationships. I had landed a new career. I had landed a modeling contract to start being featured on ESPN and all these magazines. But the best part about all of it is I had joint legal custody rights of my daughter by the time the contest was over. So what I discovered was that fitness really is the key, and diet in general, the way we feed and nourish our body, is the key to being stronger spiritually, emotionally, physically, I would even argue financially. And so that led me into the fitness industry.
I love that. And I feel like this is a topic or a theme that has been reoccurring in my conversations a lot lately. So I'm perking up when I hear these things, because what you said about that spilling over is so true. Because when you can take control of your health through exercise, through fitness, and to just establish that discipline and that consistency there, that doesn't just stop there. Then that gives you the courage and the motivation to want to make positive changes and be consistent in other areas of your life. And once you get that momentum going, it really does just take over and elevates other aspects of your life. And there, even if you're not trying, it's just really the byproduct of what happens when you take control and start making those changes. So that's so awesome.
Yeah, it's automatic, right? So, and I think that's what kind of can, if people can grasp that concept, because I could give you so many cool tricks and tactics to lose belly fat, but the reality is if you don't find a deep emotional trigger, a real deep emotional why, like think about in your heart, whose pain do you feel and who do you love so much in your life that you would never want to let down, that brings tears to your eyes? Because I think when the going gets tough, when it comes to diet or exercise or achieving any goal in life, you have to have a big emotional reason why. You have to find those deep emotional triggers. And if you don't, you're just going to bail when the going gets tough.
Right. Your why's got to make you cry.
Amen.
All right. So you recently completed that 75 hard. I know that's really popular right now. I keep seeing it all over Instagram, especially like going into these summer months. I just did a 45 medium. That's another story. But tell me about your experience with that, and what your results were, and what were some of the strategy you used to get through that?
Well, I am a huge fan of a modified version of carb cycling. So I love going very high protein, low carb, moderate fat during the week, and then carb loading on the weekends because I'm an intense exerciser. And of course, they don't call it 75 kind of hard, right? 75 hard. You have to do.
No, there's no medium there.
Right. So you're doing 2 45-minute workouts a day. And what I discovered at my age real fast is that it was very hard to recover. So one of those workouts turned into stretching and yoga. But I'm a huge proponent of synergy with exercise. And so from an exercise strategy, you have to do some cardio, not too much, because, chronic runners and marathon runners, if you look at their blood work, it'll show that they'll have lower testosterone. Sometimes they'll have suppressed thyroid hormones. They'll have higher free radicals. They'll have higher cortisol, and they'll actually have an increase in appetite higher than other athletes sometimes. Now, that's not saying cardio is not great. It is great. It's just more is not better when it comes to anything. So I'm a big believer in a little bit of high intensity interval training, a little bit of cardio, and then I'm a huge believer in weight training, because ultimately muscle equals metabolism. And if we take two physiques and we put them next to each other, and they have the same body fat, but one person has a little bit more muscle, they're going to look less overweight because that fat is spread over a little bit larger period of a space. And so I also tell people that, the first thing people do when they go on a diet is all they want to do is cardio and eat right. Well, if you don't weight train and you're like a pear and apple shaped body, now you're just going to become a smaller pear or apple, right? So you want to incorporate weight. So it's huge on weight training. And then as far as the accountability to stick to it, and I think this is the hardest part. I mean, we could talk about tactics, but the mental aspect, 75 hard is a mental toughness program. And it's called that for a reason. The 10 pages of nonfiction, the no alcohol, the no cheat food, those really start building your mental toughness. But I have to give credit to the group of guys I did it with, because we held each other accountable. And I think that that's another element. The first thing that I teach people when I start working with them, outside of finding those emotional triggers, those deep whys, and understanding how this is going to benefit every other area of their life. Like, this isn't just about fitting into your skinny jeans again. This is about a life change. Is understanding that finding somebody that you can be held accountable to. I don't care if it's a text buddy. I don't care if you hire a coach or a trainer, or do what we did. We had 16 guys that did 75 hard, only 12 finished, but every day we were texting each other. And when the going got tough, I hurt both of my knees when I first started because I got overzealous and went too hard. And I could have easily bowed out, but I didn't. And so I just turned it into yoga and soft tissue and walking instead, and listened to my body. But going back to that element, like if it wasn't for having that text thread and all those guys in that group that were younger than me, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to let them beat me. And there's no way I'm going to let Joel down. My buddy Joel Marion started the contest, and then he dangled the carrot and told everybody who finishes that he's going to take us to Cabo on a trip. And so I think that's another thing, is accountability and then having some type of reward. And I think this goes into real life. I mean, every day on a weekly basis when we're dieting, if we know we can have some pizza, then you're more likely to make a healthy choice today. Because if you create that rule, like I can only have that cheat food on Saturday, and you don't binge your stuff or go crazy, but you have that reward and you dangle that carrot psychologically. Now during the week, it's much easier to say no to your trigger foods, because it's like, well, if I say yes to this, now I can't have my pizza on the weekend. So I really think that when it comes to like things like 75 hard or any plan in general, that deep emotional reason why, that accountability, and then dangling a carrot, finding some type of deadline or reward to have on a weekly basis, or even like a deadline to look forward to. Like I always schedule photo shoots about every couple of years, because I know when I put $500 down with that photographer, now everything I put in my mouth is viewed differently because I have skin in the game. And so if you're going to do something like 75 hard or any plan, I really recommend finding some way to hold yourself accountable through a friend, through a coach, or through some type of reward that or incentive that gets you to the deadline.
Yeah, that's really good advice, especially like never underestimate the importance of having an accountability group. I know people really like to do things on their own, or to say, oh, I can do this, or I've got this, or I don't need a coach, I don't need a team or whatever, because even though we're like tribal pack animals, there's something about us also that we're like very individualistic, and we think, oh, I can do this on my own. But like you said, when things get hard, to have someone to lean on and to pull you through and support and to hold you accountable and to remind you what your why is and why you started and why you want to get through this, like those things are priceless. It's so great.
It's really the elements people leave out. People are all tactical, right? It's like, well, what diet do I follow? What exercise plan do I follow? They forget that the most powerful thing that they have is what's between their ears. And until they get that right, they won't get fat loss right. Because I mean, science proves it over and over. We can talk about studies that show how neuroscience works, that if you believe what you're doing is going to work, it will. And if you don't, it probably won't. And there's a lot of research showing that.
Yeah. You touched on a couple things that I want to go back to. One, it was all the cardio and people thinking they need to do more cardio and more cardio. Why is it that we think that we have to do all these long, intense exercises if we want to see results? And I find, like, I work with mostly women, and I think Leah does too. We see the same things in our clients. They want to just like, oh, I'm going to start running, or I'm going to do back-to-back classes at the gym. But there's really not a lot of people go, oh, I'm going to start weight training, even though study after study shows how important it is to lift heavy weights and to train your muscles. But still, cardio is the number one choice. So I guess this is like a two-part question. One is, why is it that all that extra cardio isn't as beneficial as maybe like a shorter, more efficient, like a HIIT or something that involves weight training? And why do you think people have it in their minds that they have to instantly go to the cardio?
Well, the first thing is that they're afraid of weight training because of bodybuilding and steroids, probably, right? Like back in the day, everybody associates lifting weights with a big, bulky bodybuilder. And I think that that's how the myth started, like women especially. If I lift weights, I'm going to get bulky. And this is completely a myth. Yes, there are a certain percentage of the population of females that have a little bit higher testosterone that will bulk up easier. But the majority of women, probably 85, 90% of women, that will not happen to, right? And so that, I think that started that, is that people are automatically pushed away. And I think that, you know, especially here in America, is more is better, right? That's, we all have that mentality. Like we've supersized every meal we eat, you know what I mean? So it's the same type of mentality, we think. And then we also associate the results happening during the workout. And so people don't associate weight training with fat loss. They associate weight training with building muscle. But well, why would I do that? I want to burn belly fat. So they just go do more cardio instead, right?
Mhm.
And so I think there's like another thing that happens with people is they don't understand that exercise is just the stimuli for the results that occur while you're resting and nourishing. That's like the number one thing I also tell people. And I discovered this in 98, over 25 years ago when I did this. And it's literally went from 12 hours a week, 12 hours a week of exercise. I started doing 20-minute cardio sessions and then weight training 3 days of the week. I do a 20-minute cardio session 5-6 days of the week, and that was it. And I got amazing results. Now, of course, a huge component was obviously the diet. We could talk more about that.
Right. Well, that's a good segue because you mentioned doing the cardio to burn that belly fat, but you have the 3 simple steps that you say nobody talks about. That is the trick to burning stubborn fat cells. So what are those? Can you share them with us, or is that just a teaser?
No, it's a scientifically proven protocol that you can use to release a fatty acid from a fat cell and shrink it. We don't really burn fat cells. We shrink them. So you never get rid of fat cells. You just make them bigger and smaller because they store triglycerides inside of them. And most people don't understand that. But I will preface this with saying that this method will only work when you're down to the stubborn fat, right? So I have what I call the dynamic duo. And no matter how many tricks or techniques or evidence-based strategies I could give people, if the dynamic duo is not in place, then nothing else will really matter. And that is adequate protein intake and a calorie deficit. And this was proven over and over again by things like the Twinkie diet, right? This guy ate nothing but Twinkies and a protein shake, and he lost 39 pounds, and his before and after blood work blew my mind. He ate nothing but crap in a protein shake, and his blood work was incredible afterwards. Now, they didn't measure how much muscle he lost or water he lost, but we have to know the majority of that 39 pounds is probably fat, right? And so you have to be in a calorie deficit, and you must get adequate protein intake. Now, once you start losing weight and you're in a calorie deficit and you have adequate protein intake, I just think you can let fats and carbs fill in the missing gaps based on your own personal preference. Because when we look at the science, protein is the king of all macros. And that's one of the reasons that I'm a fan of keto is because I think it forces people to eat more protein. And your body burns 30% more calories digesting protein than it does digesting fats or carbohydrates. So it's the only macro that's going to increase your metabolism. Dozens of research studies, there's meta-analysis showing it's the only macro that prevents muscle loss and will promote muscle gains. It stabilizes your blood sugar. If you eat it before bed, you'll gain more muscle than if you don't. And research backs all this up. So get adequate protein, put your body in a deficit. Now, once you lose weight and you lose that first 10, 15 pounds, you get down to stubborn fat. Well, it's kind of like a tube of toothpaste. It's really easy to squeeze out that toothpaste when you first get it. But when you get down to the end, you kind of got to squeeze it out of there. Here's where the 3 steps can really come into play. Now, scientifically, the first thing that you have to do is you have to release a fat cell. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to be in a fasted state, because when you're in a fasted state, insulin is very low, and this kicks up your sympathetic nervous system. And this will allow your body to release fatty acids from fat cells because your adrenal glands will release hormones called catecholamines. So when you're in a fasted state, if you engage in a high intensity exercise session, your body will release adrenaline and catecholamines, and they are responsible for releasing fatty acids from fat cells into the bloodstream, right? So the first step is to release the fat cell. The second step is to deliver it. And research shows that fat burning is higher in adjacent pockets of fat that have blood flow. So theoretically, if you're down to your last 10 pounds and you do an ab routine and you get blood flowing into your stomach region and you're in a fasted state, and then you go ahead and you do high intensity exercise, you're going to release fatty acids from the stomach area into the bloodstream. Now, here's the key. There's something that takes place. So you're in a fasted state, you create blood flow to the region, say it's your glutes and you're really lean, but you can't get rid of that last little goo on your glutes. And you do a glute routine, you create blood flow to that glute routine. You do high intensity exercise. Now you've released all these fatty acids from your glutes into the bloodstream, and they need to be delivered to working tissue and burned off. Well, because the fat is stubborn, it can actually travel to another area of your body and restore. This is a process called re-esterification, and it happens in leaner individuals. And so what you need to do is after you do create blood flow and you do high intensity exercise, you simply walk briskly or do some type of low intensity cardio for 30 to 40 minutes afterwards, and you'll burn off those residual fatty acids floating around in the bloodstream. And that's the 3 simple steps to shrinking a stubborn fat cell.
Okay, I know what I'm doing at the gym tomorrow.
And it does
All
work.
right.
I've used it many times, but I don't do it till I get to about 10% body fat. Right.
Okay.
So it's a stubborn fat technique. It's not something that's going to be effective for somebody who's just trying to keep a calorie deficit and get adequate protein.
Right. No, but that's a really good strategy, because I know I was working in a gym prior to moving to Oklahoma, and that was my wheelhouse of clients was those last 10 pounds. Can't lose these last 10 pounds, those last 5 pounds. So had I known now, or then what I know now, could have changed it. So see, I'm always learning something on this show too. It's not just our listeners. That was great. Leah, it looks like you have something to say.
Oh no, I was just thinking that it's really great. Are we ready to move on to an article? Yeah, I'm going to change the tempo, not even the tempo, just the tone just a little bit, and get back into this anti-aging, because this is one of the number one things that everybody's always talking about is how can we look good as we're aging. And I've got an article here which goes into about how all the billionaires are looking into anti-aging technology to try and help. But I have a feeling Shaun's going to tell us there's some other ways to reverse anti-aging, and we don't need to spend billions of dollars on a product to help us to do that. But before we get into that, I'll just read a little bit about the article. So basically, the article talks about these new technologies that are coming, which are basically like turning old cells into young cells and things like that. But one thing in the article that I really liked was that most of these people had adopted a longevity mindset. And a longevity mindset is a mindset around like how to have 6 basic areas of life that are non-negotiable, that kind of help you to age better. And some of these ones are beliefs. So another one is a media diet, community, sleep habits, the diet that you eat, exercise habits, and keeping this mindset of a longevity. So Shaun, we've already talked about a little bit around exercise and diet. I'd love to talk a little bit more, and we talked a bit about mindset as well. I'd like to talk about some of your factors for longevity and what you thought about this article.
Well, I think really it boils down to it all starts to be with your brain. I mean, neuroscience proves this over and over. I think we all have good genes and we all have bad genes. It's which ones are you going to turn on and which ones are you going to turn off? And I really think that starts with our thought life, with our thoughts. And I mean, we can look at research studies that show the power of the brain. And I really think that just believing inside your own head, what you're doing is working is going to be the most powerful factor, whether it's, you're trying to achieve a goal in business, whether it's your family life, whether it's health and fitness, it does not matter. I think that, and research shows this, the gratitude thing. If you look at the research behind people who take the time to be grateful and write in a gratitude journal, research shows they have better genetics because they turn on their good genes. They live longer, they have less disease, they make more money, they're happier. And so, we could have, when you have if you're a millionaire or billionaire and you can have all these treatments, it's one thing, but really you have the most powerful treatment that you can give yourself if you just learn how to control what's up here. And there's a couple of research studies that are pretty fascinating that prove this, but they're really more diet related, not more anti-aging related, but it shows like they gave 2 groups of people a 350 calorie smoothie. They told one group it was 550 calories, the other group 160 calories. So one group believed it was a diet shake. The other group believed it was a shake full of fat and sugar. They did blood work at 30, 60, and 90 minutes later. And the group that believed it was a diet shake was releasing 3 times more ghrelin in their blood. Ghrelin is your hunger hormone, simply because they believed it was a diet shake. The group that believed it was a fattening shake released 3 times less ghrelin. So again, this goes back to the power your mind can have on your results in any area of your life.
That's so powerful, isn't it? And yeah, we don't really need all these, technologies that are coming out. So what are some of your tips on cultivating a better mindset in order to help you with longevity?
Well, you talked about the media diet.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm a huge believer in a digital detox once a week, where you just pick one day a week where you don't have a set schedule and you don't get on your computer at all that day, and you do your best to not get on your phone. I will tell you that people that first do that will feel anxious because they're so addicted to the dopamine they get every day from it.
I just had a little bit of anxiety just thinking about doing that. I was like, oh, what day would I do? Oh my gosh, you just sent me in a mini panic.
But it's really freeing. And I've experimented with this on date night with my wife. I'll leave the phone at home, and after a while, it becomes almost freedom to not have to look at your phone, grab your phone and look at it. We're so programmed. Even if it's not dinging and you have it on silent, you're grabbing the thing every freaking couple minutes and looking at it. And so if you can free yourself from that ball and chain, and you think, like you just said, I had a panic attack just thinking about it, right? We joke about it, but until we actually try it, we don't realize how bad it is for our mental health to be attached to that thing 24/7, right? And so the other thing is when you wake up in the morning, your brain waves are more receptive to learning, and whatever you put into your head in the first 30 minutes of waking up, you're more likely to absorb it both consciously and subconsciously. And so if you go right to social media, or you flick on the news, the negative news, and you expose yourself to all that negativity, now you've just set your day up for failure, because you've just planted a seed inside of your head that things are negative. And so I think you should have a rule in place. I'm not saying don't get on your phone when you wake up, but I think you should have a rule in place that a couple things should have to take place before that. And if you could just simply take the act, I have a little gratitude journal. I actually have it right here. Right here. And if you just take 5 to 10 minutes and you write in that every morning before you start your day, I think it can have a profound effect on every other area of your life. And then really making a commitment to have a digital detox, even if it's just dinner time 3 nights a week with your family, right? Just to be present with them and let go of that. And I think honestly, that's going to accelerate your longevity. That's going to help you live longer, because diving down these negative rabbit holes, and now that becomes like what we focus on expands.
Yeah. If my kids just left the digital stuff away, they'll live longer as well, because I'm always telling them to get rid of it at the dinner table. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I have to get up early every morning to teach yoga and Pilates. So I have to have my watch on for my alarm, so it doesn't wake anyone up, but just wakes me up. But on Sundays, I don't have to get up and do anything. So I actually take the watch off and take it out of the room, and my phone and everything. And I allow myself to wake up naturally one day of the week. I know it's not a lot, but it just means so much. I really look forward to that morning where I just don't have anything that's annoying me or waking me up or telling me to get going. It's just in my own time.
I have a dry sauna, and I call it my God box. And what happens is when I get into that sauna, I'm not allowed to have technology with me. Instead, I'll have my gratitude journal. I'll have my goal cards. I do have an old iPhone that has my Mind movie on it, where I watch slides and pictures and images and movies of what I want my future to look like. And it's literally like a 4 or 5 minute movie. And I started making these back in 2008. I'll never forget my stepson. He was looking over my shoulder one day watching it, and he saw some of the slides were like, dude, like some of them are outrageous financial goals and stuff like that. And like a couple of years later, he goes, holy crap, man, it all came true. And so it is kind of like the law of attraction, but I call it the law of action attraction, right? You know, God made the birds and the worms, but he didn't go around dumping the worms in the nest. We ultimately have to get off our butt, put on our work boots, and take action no matter what we want to achieve in life.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. What about, a key to successful people, and maybe even longevity, we can attribute it to? People talk about meditation a lot. Do you meditate? Because I find like a lot of people find that really difficult to do these days because there is so much noise around. But if you look at successful people, meditation is one of their recommendations.
I think yoga or meditation, it's going to reduce your cortisol, right? It's going to activate certain areas of your brain you don't activate. I'm not a huge guy on meditating, but I do deep breathing in the sauna. I'm very intentional with my breathing. I'm very intentional with my affirmations. I think I might get into a meditative state without knowing it. And then I also listen to something called holosync, which is meditative music. I'm a very intense guy. And so it's very hard, like, just to like, okay, I'm going to stretch for 20 minutes. That just sounds brutally painful to me. Like, just to relax and stretch for 20 minutes. So, but I agree with you. I mean, I think that, having something like that where you're alone, you have no technology, you're shutting off the world. I mean, we could go back, we could talk about many examples of successful people. Jesus Christ went off into the woods every morning and he prayed. He didn't take the disciples with him. He was by himself and he didn't have an iPhone. Right. And so we need to carry that stuff over into our era, which is so difficult to do because we all know that we're being exposed to more marketing messages in one day than the previous ancestors were exposed to in their entire lifetime.
Yeah, definitely. I love that. It's just trying to find something that works for you and your lifestyle, but gives you that downtime or that time alone or that reflection time or the gratitude journal, like you were saying, or finding that time to, sit in self-reflection, which doesn't happen very often. I think also people are afraid of what they might find these days when they do sit in silence.
Green spaces helps. Getting green spaces. Research shows that the minute you're in green spaces or you put your feet in the sand, you're activating electrons in your body, your brain's releasing, more endorphins when you're in green spaces. So like you said, customize it to whatever works for you, but whatever it is, find it and make it a habit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think also being accepting of knowing that what's working for you now might not be what's working for you down the line. Like, I know for me, I went through about 6 months where I was really into hot yoga and I loved that. And now I can't even get through a class. Like, I can't stand it. And so right now I'd rather be out going for a walk and then having more time with like I don't have a gratitude journal, but doing like journaling or something. So I think also recognizing that when what's working for you is not working for you, stop trying to force it and just adjust and pivot and find something else.
Exactly. I agree 100%. You got to pivot. If you're not staying consistent with it, make a pivot.
Love it. Holly, I'll hand back over to you.
Well, this is just really quick. We have one more article here, and it just kind of is along the same lines. This is from Medical News Today, and it talks about how exercise may protect brain health by lowering cardiovascular risk factors. And just the summary of the article is that exercise has often been called food for the brain, with many studies showing the benefits of exercise for improving brain health and reducing the risks of dementia. There's a current research study that states physical activity improves our cognitive brain function by reducing BMI and improving insulin metabolism. Improvement in weight control can also limit the rate of brain volume loss, which is also a known risk factor for dementia. I think we could write books upon books about what the benefits of exercise is on the brain. But Shaun, what has been your experience working with clients in the 40s and 50s and 60s, and maybe some cognitive improvements you might see in correlation to improving exercise and physical fitness?
Well, automatically, their memory starts improving and they start feeling sharper, more energetic mentally, obviously, more focused. But that's why I'm a big proponent of, I created something called the Over 40 Absolution 12-minute body weight workouts. Like several years ago, I created this just because the number one excuse that everybody has is they don't have the time to exercise, right? And so I created body weight workouts that were 12 minutes long, and they're specifically designed to release growth hormone and adrenaline. These are the hormones that are going to activate more chemicals in your brain. I mean, your pituitary gland releases growth hormone, right? So these are anti-aging hormones that not only burn fat, but are going to improve your overall brain health. And I find that when you're in a fasted state and you do high intensity exercise, and I recommend this is something that you ease into if you're not used to it. The research shows, I think there's a book, it's called Spark. And like you said, there's probably many books out there, talks about the research of the brain and the exercise. After a high intensity exercise burst in a fasted state, it shows that they did a test on people, two groups of people. One group didn't exercise, one group did. And the group that exercised for 4 hours afterwards they were smarter for 4 hours afterwards. They tested them for 4 hours afterwards. So they literally were more intelligent after they did this. So obviously this increases your energy, your focus. And I really think it comes down to feeling better about yourself in general. I think that, when there's something that happens to us psychologically, when you do something that you really don't feel like doing, and then afterwards you receive that reward. Right. And so there's the hormonal aspect of all this is very, very powerful. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the number one excuse why people don't exercise is because they don't have time. And there really is no excuse. You can literally get it done in 12 minutes. You just need to, literally, you could do just 3 different body weight exercises for 30 seconds, rest 30 seconds in between, and keep repeating those 3 exercises. You're done in 12 minutes. Now you've just activated all these anti-aging hormones inside your body. You've just given yourself the brain health you need to have more focus and energy because you're delivering oxygen to your brain. I watched a presentation recently and talked about how disease is just really the absence of oxygen. And I think that it's a really interesting concept because ultimately that's really what's happening. You're just increasing oxygen to your brain, to your heart, to other areas of your body.
Yeah, and that's a good kind of a mental image too, because if you think about everyone wants to burn fat, they want to fire up their metabolism, they want to torch things. Everything's about burn, burn, burn. So if you can just remember, oxygen is the key ingredient to fueling any kind of fire. So you can just kind of put those two things together. It's oxygen. Okay, Leah, do you have anything else you want to add here before we wrap up? And Shaun, I'm going to ask you to share where people can find you and all that stuff. Leah, do you have anything?
No, I don't have any further questions. It's been a really great chat. Thank you, Shaun.
Okay. Yeah. So Shaun, why don't you tell our listeners, our audience, where they can find you? Where's the best place to reach you on social media and all that good stuff?
Handle on Instagram is the Rip Grandpa, but our main hub is YouTube, which is Beyond 40. And then, of course, beyond40.com is our nutritional supplement line, formulations that are specifically designed for the metabolism and hormones of people over 40 years old. And I think that's kind of like my main focus is when I turned 40 years old, my wife was diagnosed with colorectal cancer, and the radiation treatments forced her into early menopause. And no matter how hard we tried using traditional exercise methods, she couldn't lose the stubborn fat. And she was storing it in really unusual places, upper belly, all this. And so we started focusing on just her hormones and the hormonal entrainment through intermittent fasting and through carb loading on weekends. And all of a sudden the needle started moving. So Beyond 40 is all about focusing on the metabolism and the hormones for people over 40 years old.
All right. I love that. And I was on your YouTube channel earlier, and there's definitely some really great and informative videos on there. So be sure you go and listen to that. And I know our audience is right around this age group. So this is perfect. Thank you so much, Shaun. It's been wonderful having you on today. I really enjoyed this conversation. And that is the end of today's episode. Our theme music is created by Andrew Bowden, and production services are by Kevin Kennedy Spain of Disco Light Media. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week.
Thank you.